What is intuition? Are you using it? Do you value it? Are you in tune with it? Do you guide your life with it? Do you use it every day? Are you not in touch with it? These are all the things I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the power of intuition, and I want to talk about how to get in touch with it, how to access it, why it's important, and why it's such a critical piece in our own spiritual evolution and our own connection to a higher source ourselves and the unfoldment of our life in a way that feels in harmony with how our spirit is evolving. So, intuition to me is probably the most important way to live my life. It's not only an important thing, but it's also the way in which I live my life. And I really fundamentally believe that our intuition is meant to be at the forefront of every decision we make. We're meant to use our intuition as our decision makers, and then we're meant to use our minds to help us with like the little details to make those decisions kind of happen. But the way that our world works today is we're using our minds to make our decisions, and it's like our intuition has become smaller and smaller. It's become more and more atrophied. And in a sense, we've become kind of neutered as a population on this planet, especially Western populations. Carl Jung talked about this. He said that, the Western man has an atrophy of instinct. Instinct to me is simply, the base form of intuition. We as humans, animals use their instincts to survive. They don't have minds like us. They don't have rational thinking minds that are thinking like, oh, what do I want for dinner? They are using their gut, their instincts, which is connected to a higher source, a higher energy, to guide them. And we as humans have that same source inside of us, but we have been fundamentally trained out of this source since birth. So, we have in our culture, if you think about it, there is not any system, at least in the United States, and I'm in most Western countries. I think it's different in some other countries, but that, no system, our schools, our government, our courts, our legal system, our medical system. Can you think of any space within any of those that values, promotes, and brings awareness to intuition? There's nothing. And this is wild to me, and it is to me the reason why we are on this planet at this point in time. At least in the United States, 70% of all Americans are on some kind of prescription drug. Because when you're that cut off from your intuition, which is your sense of soul, it's how you connect to a higher self. It's a spiritual, mysterious, internal feeling. When you're cut off from that, and you're trained to be cut off from that, you become diseased, because the intuition, if you kind of take a step back, our intuition is really, it's the feminine virtue of life. A lot of people talk about feminism. A lot of people are really into the women's movement, especially since 2017 and the Me Too movement. There's this new awareness of women, but it's really interesting because it's a face. It's like it's an image. It's not a virtue. A virtue, a true feminine virtue, which is something all of us carry within us, is the yin, right? I like to take everything back to the Tao, to the yin and the yang, right? There's the yin, which is the being. It is the receptive space. And then there's the yang, which is the doing and the active space. The yang is also rational. The yin is intuitive. Okay, that's the most baseline way to kind of separate and to kind of look at those two. We live in a world that has a diminishment, a deep, deep diminishment and devaluation of feminine virtues, which is which is our intuition. You know, and this is really damaging. It's incredibly damaging to our self-worth, especially if you are somebody that is hypersensitive. When you are hypersensitive, meaning you are using more of your consciousness, you are using a higher level of consciousness, that means that you're integrating your intuition with things. And when your intuition is not as seen as something that is valuable in our external world by any system, then you yourself begin to feel that you are not worthy. This was my story, and this is what I see. This is what has happened to witches since the dawn of time. Because witches are people that use their intuition to guide their lives. They use their intuition as their primary force. And you know what? With intuition, you can't explain it. It's in the dark. It's the yin. It's the mystery. It's the internal space. You can't explain it. You cannot rationalize it. You cannot reason with it. So anytime it has to come up against a force where you have to explain yourself, you simply can't. And when you live in a culture that only values reason, then what happens to the intuition? It all but disappears, evaporates, right? And I really feel like this is where we're at. This is why we're at where we're at, where we live in the most materialistic age that has ever existed on planet Earth. I was watching, I was curious because I was like, what are all these reality love shows about on Netflix? They're just popping up like crazy, right? There's all these like love, I've never watched any of them, and I was curious about them. So I watched one of them recently, and I was horrified. People on there are like, I just want to be married. I just want love. I don't care. They don't really care who it's with. The people on there, they're like, by the time I was 27, I wanted 2 kids and I wanted to be married, and that's not happening, and I need to make it happen. And it's like, everything is getting driven by this mind, this control, this idea, this rationality, and it's all materialistic. It's this, that, this, and that. There's no emphasis on how it feels, what it's like, the process, the integration, the relationship, right? There is absolutely zero emphasis placed or valuation placed on that. To me, this is really, really why we are, at this point in time, 70% of Americans are on some kind of pill. Because when you are that fractured from a young age, that separated to distrust, to mistrust your own internal wisdom, your own internal knowing, what happens? It's like you literally lose. You can't make any decisions. You become indecisive, and you don't fundamentally know who you are. That was written above the Oracle of Delphi, above the doorway at the Oracle of Delphi is know thyself. It's a fundamental, most important. It's the first rune. It's the first rune. The first rune in the Book of Runes is Manas, the self. You cannot move forward in anything if you do not fundamentally know yourself. But there's so much trauma in our culture and we are not trained from a young age to learn how to work with the spirit and our emotions through that trauma, that we disassociate from it and we only apply ourselves to the rational and the material. Now, the rational and the material is, rational thinking, it's very much based in control, which is based in fear, fundamentally. Fundamentally, those two things are fundamentally connected, right? Because when you are when you don't fundamentally trust that things are going to work out, that you have a connection, that there is a source that has your back, of course you're going to want to control every single aspect of your reality. And since we live in a time, even with religion, okay, because we live in a time, right, where there's religion and then there's Newtonian science, right, that is our medical system, that is the basis for our medical system, right? And within religion, you have a little bit more of a affiliation with the spirit, but it's within these boundaries, right? And there's a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. And there's really not an autonomous sense of owning your own truth, right? Within Newtonian science, we have a paradigm that has zero reconciliation with the intuitive part, the intuitive being, the intuitive self, the spiritual self. How can we live in a culture that doesn't acknowledge the spirit behind matter? It literally is a culture going mad where the majority of people need to be medicated because they are going mad. They are sick in some way. When you get cut off from your spirit, from your soul, when you are taught not to trust your own internal knowing, you're going to go mad. You're going to become neurotic. You're going to become anxious because you're losing your truth, your deep internal knowing, your deep internal self. My other thing that I do, the kind of work that I do that I really, really, really love to do is shadow work, right? The shadow is part of the feminine. It's part of the yin. It's the darkness. And, it's the part of ourselves that we may not necessarily understand how to access fully. It's where a lot of our trauma lies. It's where a lot of our darkness lies. It's where we don't necessarily have consciousness, right? Where our consciousness has kind of, the light of our own consciousness has been taken from. It's in the shadow. It's hidden away, right? Our intuition, the feminine virtues in every human, not just women, has been taken away from us in our culture. And we are suffering deeply for it. And our children will suffer for it. And our planet is suffering. To me, this is the core, fundamental reason why we are so imbalanced at this point in time on planet Earth. Okay? So to me, the most important thing, beyond activism, beyond climate change, beyond all of it, the deepest shadow reconciliation that we can do is to begin to reconcile with our own internal truth, because that is where our authenticity lies. And that is where our own truth resides. We live in this time right now where everybody's like, there's a problem with misinformation. There's a problem with truth, right? Nobody knows what their truth is because they're so tapped out. The only way to access your own truth is to be in tune with your intuition. But we're trained out of that. So we're told by all of these external systems that are completely disembodied and torn away from their intuition what to do, because they feel that they want to control, to keep us safe. But this is the age of Aquarius, you guys, and this is part of what individuation and authentication is about. And it's part about the rebalancing and the recalibration of our world. Is about bringing back the intuition, the intuitive faculties, the deep self-knowing, the deep understanding of the self. So I want to talk about a few things about intuition and how to know when. I'm going to talk how to know when it's your intuition or when you're just feeling, when it's your mind. Okay? So something I've talked about with intuition is reactive feelings versus guided feelings. Okay? Reactive feelings are feelings that are very much in your head. They're very much a reaction to the culture at large. They're a reaction to what's happening around you. A lot of times they are in a fight or flight kind of a mode. I have to make sure I'm doing this right. I need to fit in. I can't be, it's like always kind of making sure you're in within the lines, that you're okay, that you're safe, right? Within our culture, it's a reactive decision, right? A reactive decision can be as simple as wanting to get your hair dyed so that you look okay, or making sure your kid is going to school on time, or reactive decisions, right? A guided decision is a decision that it has a different frequency. It feels differently in your body. It doesn't necessarily make sense. This is key. This is key because there is a lot of worthlessness and self-worth issues around not making sense. Especially because for me personally, I'm somebody that's extremely intuitive, and I always have been. And it's really been hard for me to have to explain myself in so many ways to people when I have a feeling about things, and then not have that be valued as something that's worthy. It's taken me years to build the self-worth when you live in a world that doesn't value the thing that is the most natural to you. Like, I can't turn that part of me off no matter how much I've tried. No matter how much I've tried, I can't turn that part of me off. It's been years and years and years of depression and going into dark places and shadow work to come out the other side, to realize that there's not something that's wrong with me. It's actually something that's right with me, that I've been forced to hide, that I've been forced to put away. And it's actually the healing balm that our world needs. So a guided feeling is really, it's like the root of it is instinctual. A lot of times our instincts, we are animals, right? We come from animals. And we have this within us. It's a matter of exercising it and remembering it, bringing awareness to it, beginning to concentrate on it, bringing intention around it, bringing an intention into your life that you want to bring it back. You want to start living your life from this place, from an intentional, intuitive space. But yeah, a guided feeling is simply, a lot of times it can feel, well, when you're first starting to work with it, it can feel kind of scary because you might get a feeling about something and you're like, oh, that's not what I had planned. That's not what I had planned, because it's out of your control, right? And you're like, so it might make you afraid. But if you really go inward and begin to tap it on a deeper level, it actually is something that feels really good because it feels right. It's what feels right for you, and you're able to tap your deep internal truth around something. And that's when self-worth begins to get filled up, and you deeply begin to know who you are and which way you want to go. So, yeah, that's kind of like the main message I have for today is the power of intuition, the importance of intuition, and beginning to live in a life that is more in accordance with that flow. So, the baseline for beginning to really live in an intuitive way is fundamentally beginning to understand and believe that the world, this universe, is based in love, and that we are a part of it, and that God, the universe, is working through us. It's not happening to us. Okay? This is the fundamental difference between Newtonian science. It's happening to us, or we are made, right? Or it's happening through us. There is a force that is happening through us. And as we begin to sync up with this force, we can begin to act in accordance with it. But the fundamental piece of it is you must begin to trust it, which begins beginning to take really grasped, controlled, afraid hands and beginning to open them to receive the guidance, receive the light, receive the information. A lot of times we shut it out. We've been trained to shut it out, to have an agenda, to fit in. And all of us are tired of this. We're sick and tired of it. And we're so thirsty. We're so dehydrated. These deep waters, these are the waters. These are the deep internal waters of the soul that need to be nourished, that need to be seen, that need to be valued. If they are not valued, we go in a drought. That's why there's so much heat. That's why there's so much change that's happening right now. The waters, these are the deep, intuitive waters of the soul that know, that are based in trust, that are based in receptivity, that are based in a flow state. And you can begin to live your life aligned with it inside of that flow state. But there needs to be an entire process of letting go, an entire process of releasing control, which can be the scariest freaking thing for most of us. But it's the most important thing. So please leave any comments, any questions you have for me. I'm going to start making a bunch of new videos about intuition, tapping your intuition, enhancing your intuition. And this is this is part of my book and my program, Witchy Bitch, which I have. You can check it out on chasepetiche.com. I'm doing it with many women right now. And I'm feeling a kind of revolution happening, you know? Because this is what has happened to witches since the dawn of time. It's looked many different ways, but it's what's happened since the dawn of time. And right now, you know, especially our medical system has taught us to not trust or look at the energy or our intuitive sense. And it can be seen as misinformation if you use your intuition. That's the way it's coming out now. Previously, it was witchcraft. So just remember, this is a pattern that happens over time and happens continuously throughout history. And I think at this point in time and at this point in history, it's time to reconcile and to integrate and to remember and to allow the shadow, the feminine virtues, the yin, the waters to rise, and the exhausted mind, the exhausted body to rest. All right. This is my message and my love for you guys today. I hope you're doing well. Please comment, ask me any questions. I'm down for this journey with you. All right, love.